I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen, and it's going to show you 2 years, 1947, 1948, and we're going to look at the populations in the Israel-Palestine area and see what you think. Here's the graph. What do you think about those numbers? See anything interesting there? The number of non-Jews goes from 1.324 million to 156,000 in a 1 year period, bringing Jewish population from 32% of the population to 82% of the population.
Wow.
That's why we're making this video.
Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Victor. This is Jack. As you can see, we got some crazy numbers. We got 1 million missing Palestinian people in 1 year, and let's talk about it.
Okay, so let's get into it. Basically, what I want to do is I want to tell the history real fast.
Okay.
And then we want to talk about the numbers. We want to talk about percentage of population, percentage of land ownership. Then we're going to get into the 1948 Arab-Israel war.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about the aftermath of how terrible things went for the Palestinians, as you can see from that previous graph. So, okay, the British... So we're in a situation a long time ago, right? And the British offered the Arabs independence if they fought against the Ottoman Empire in World War I.
Okay.
Great deal, because they're like colonies, you know? So they did this, and Britain reneged on it. Okay? And there's even in the movie, The Lawrence of Arabia, there's literally a scene where Lawrence of Arabia brokered the deal.
Okay.
And he's talking like, yeah, they think they're getting their independence.
Oh.
That's what we told them. That's why they're fighting. Terrible. Anyways, so... On November 2nd, 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote the letter angering the Arabs, obviously the Balfour Declaration. We know about that, basically, promising a future state to Israel. And then the Arabs got mad about that. So after World War I, the Allies created the League of Nations, and then that created the mandate system, how we're going to deal with basically areas formerly controlled by the Ottoman Empire in Germany. And they were going to be put under, quote, the tutelage of advanced nations, end quote. Okay. Until they became independent. The goal is to get them to be independent, but they need, white people to tutelage them. Okay. So anyways, after white people have betrayed their deal to the Arabs about giving them independence. Okay. So then at the time, Jews had their own militia in Palestine area called the Haganah, which is the defense in Hebrew. And they were led by David Ben-Gurion, who's going to become the first prime minister of Israel later. And he was also the leader of the current governing body, which is called the Jewish Agency. Okay. So basically, Palestinians realized that their country was being given away, and they went on strike in 1936.
Okay.
So Hitler's in power in 33.
Right.
They went on strike in 36. 39, the war's going to start.
Right.
And so they're going on strike because everything that happens, they just lose. We're going to look at that later on the land, who owns more land, and the populations and immigration and stuff. So they go on strike.
What does that mean? They're going on strike from another country?
No, they're not. They're not going to work anymore in the economy.
On the Palestinian economy? Or there's Palestinians all over the planet?
There's no Palestinian economy. It's in the state of Palestine, which is run by the British.
Okay.
Because the British have the British mandate going. So it's run by the British for the Jews, and the Palestinians are the low end. And they're like, We're not working no more. We're done with that. Not allowed to not work.
Oh.
You're not allowed to not work. People get furious. The British responded with arrests, torture, mass punishment, executions. Leaders were exiled, weapons were confiscated, and houses were blown up.
That's the good guys doing that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Of course. The British and the Jews, yes. So the revolt continued until 1939, when the war starts, by which time 10% of the adult Palestinian population had been killed, injured, arrested, or exiled. Then what happens in 1939 is very interesting, right? So basically, the League of Nations, I believe, was it the League of Nations or the British? I'm not exactly sure how this went, but there's the thing called the White Paper of 1939. And it became the governing policy for mandatory Palestine from 1939 until 1948. Okay? It created the first conflict between the British and the Zionists. Up until now, the British do whatever the Zionists want. Like even during the 36 to 39 conflict, when the British is like, oh, we got to go do a raid, the Haganah is going with them. They're doing joint raids. This is not you know who's on your side and who's
Yeah.
not, and everybody's against the Palestinians. So this created the first conflict between the British and the Zionists because it rejected partition and allowed for Palestine to become independent with everyone there sharing it together, right? It also imposed severe limits on Jewish land purchases and immigration. Okay, so we're going to do an episode in a future date about Yitzhak Rabin, where he tries to be more moderate and gets assassinated for it.
Oh.
This is that type of situation. You can't be more moderate around Zionists. It doesn't work. So Zionists began setting off bombs across the country, killing dozens of Palestinians, right? Terrorism, we call it.
Oh.
You know? Basically, then World War II distracted everyone. Britain couldn't focus on Palestine. In 1947, Britain is going to ask the newly formed UN to help it, and it formed the Palestine Commission, which is going to move us into the 47-48 conflict that we talked about in the first graphic. Okay, so now we're going to go through the population numbers and the land history. And we're just going to put up a few graphics and show you. Okay, the first slide that I'm putting up is going to be the 1917 pre-British Mandate Palestine. On October 31st, 1917, British forces conquered Palestine from the Ottoman Turks, ending 1,400 years of Islamic rule over the region. At the time, Jews made up 6% of the population. If you go to another resource I have below, which is because this is coming from Al Jazeera, so I got to do a little fair check in here. The Jewish Virtual Library resource below, obviously, we know what that is, said in 1918 there were 60,000 Jews and 600,000 non-Jews, which would make them 8.1%. So they're claiming 8%. Al Jazeera is claiming 6%. Whatever.
Okay, but it's more or less the same.
Yeah. So now the second slide, from 1918 to 1947, Jewish immigration from Europe under the British Mandate. The Jewish population in Palestine increased from 6% in 1918 to 33% in 1947. Again, I checked that with the Jewish Virtual Library, and they said 630,000 Jews, 1.9 million non-Jews, so 32%. So the number was fair with the 33% on Al Jazeera. Pretty right in there. Okay, third slide. 1920 to 1946, Jewish immigration to Palestine. An estimated 376,415 Jewish immigrants, mostly from Europe, arrived in Palestine between 1920 and 1946, according to British records. So we can see that the graph in the middle of the screen is the gradual increase of a total number on the left side of the screen. And then the numbers on the right side of the screen, I'm going to put a blown up image of that for the fourth slide, and we're going to discuss a few things that are interesting there. So basically, everything's below 10,000 a year, immigrants, except for 1924, there's 13,000, 1925, 34,000, 1926, 13,000. So there was a surge right there in the 20s. And then in 1933, there's the transfer agreement. So we see 30,000. In 1934, we see 42,000. 1935, 62,000. 1936, 30,000. 1937 to 39, the average is 13,000 per year. And then the years 44 and 45, the average is 13, and then it drops down below 10 again. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
So basically, now we're going to go to the next slide, and it's basically the population of Palestine, And so then these are the numbers here. We've seen the bottom of this chart before, and we just see it's not that interesting. It's an average rise in Jewish population. It's an average rise in non-Jews. It's an average rise in general population. It's an average rise in Jewish percentage until we get to the very bottom, 47, 48, and we see the drastic change. Okay. And then basically, I'm going to show you another slide. It's going to be the 1947 UN Partition Plan, Resolution 181, in which the U.S. proposed a plan that would grant 55% of historic Palestine to a Jewish state and 45% to a non-contiguous Arab one, which is terrible, with Jerusalem under international control. So basically, it was voted, this was voted 33 for, 13 against, and 10 abstained. Now, you got to imagine the UN had just formed, so not a lot of nations were members of it.
Okay.
So that's why you get only, 56 nations. And basically, all Arab nations voted against it. And they got bullied by the world here. This is democracy. And then at the time, the population was 32% Jewish and 68. So the 32% Jewish get 55%. And the 68% non-Jewish get 45% of their own land. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the 1948 Arab-Israel War.
Okay.
So before the war had even started, this is November 29, 1947, the United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine was adopted that we just talked about, right?
What year was it the State of Israel began?
It's going to begin in 48.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
So we're leading up to that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's actually the beginning of the war.
Oh.
The war's not going to start in 47. I'm going to give you the lead up in 47 and then 48 and then instantly it's war.
Okay.
Okay. So November 29th, 1947, the partition plan was adopted. At the time, Jews owned 6% of the land. So they were the owners of 6% of the land. Not they lived on, but how much they owned. They owned 6%. They were granted 55%. A good deal, honestly. So they were given 56% of the land. If you want to be particular, the Arab state would be 42% of the land. These numbers are more accurate than the previous ones I gave you because the remaining 2% comprising the cities of Jerusalem and Bethlehem and their adjoining areas would then become international zone. And then Arabs were 67% of the population at the time. Okay, so the Civil War began the day after the partition was adopted. So they pass it, and now there's Civil War. This is not the Arab-Israeli War.
Okay.
This is the Civil War. The Palestinians and all Arabs rejected the partition. Ben-Gurion ordered his militias to take more land than they had been allotted. So it's time to get them. You know, they're resisting or just being ordered that they lose all the land. Anyways, so this is a very important what happened. April 9th, 1948. So now we're in 1948, Civil War is going on. There's the Deir Yassin, I'm not going to pronounce it right, the Deir Yassin massacre, right? So a UN report from the British says that 250 people were killed in circumstances of great savagery. Women and children were stripped, lined up, photographed, and then slaughtered by automatic firing, and survivors were told of even more incredible brutalities. Okay, so this is not uncommon knowledge of stuff like this because I learned about it on the Jimmy Dore show.
Oh.
Literally, they play clips of old men being interviewed in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever. It's like a little older film. And they're just like one in the video below. If you want to watch the YouTube video that has some of the references here, they literally play one where there's this old Jewish guy, and they're like, "How many civilians did you kill?" And he just laughs, and he's like, "I don't know." He's like, "My machine gun had 250, rounds of ammunition, and I ran out often." And he's like, "Ah!" But there's tons of videos like that.
Wow.
And they're just talking about just the slaughtering. They're talking about underage girls. I'm not going to clip all that stuff in here. That stuff exists. You can go find it. It's on Jimmy Dore. So It's not mainstream, but it's out there.
Right.
That this is a thing, And so basically the story of Deir Yassin, the massacre, spread and Arabs began fleeing. They would literally go to the next city to do the same thing. And it's just empty. It's just a town though. And It's empty. Where are they all going? Well, they don't want that to happen. Historians report dozens of similar massacres during this period. Militia soldiers said that Ben-Gurion's orders were to, quote, drive the people from this place, end quote. After they were driven away, tractors destroyed the villages so they wouldn't come back. This is where the population's going.
Oh, okay.
It's not like they're all getting genocided. They're getting ran out of their country,
Yeah.
So now we're going to go to May 14th, 1948. Ben-Gurion proclaims Israel's Declaration of Independence with him as the first prime minister. So he's just saying, we're now the rulers of all of it. Forget the UN partition plan. Forget all that. It's now all ours. This is all just completely fake.
Yeah.
This is like me declaring independence for America, and I'm the king of the new monarchy. Oh, go ahead, dude. Go. I mean, you're a clown. Go ahead, Yeah. So he does this, and he does it under a picture of Herzl, Theodor Herzl, one of the founders of Zionism, which we talked about in a previous video. And so the next day, May 15th, the British mandate ends because they're now their own state, whatever. At this point, 250,000 Palestinians have already fled during the Civil War. Okay. Also, the next day, when the British mandate ends, that's when the war starts because this is called either the 1948 Arab-Israel War or the first Arab-Israel War. Basically, Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, and Iraq all attack at the same time.
Wow.
I mean, the partition was bad enough and they were furious.
Sure.
And they're like, we're going for it. We're independent, right? League of Nations, United Nations has our back, whatever, because they're United Nations now. They do. We'll find out how that works out later. Okay. So Israel pushed into several towns assigned to the Arabs, right? Including Lydda and Ramleh. I'm not going to pronounce those correct, even though I heard them correct on the video. I don't care. 50,000 Arabs were forced to leave in what is called the Lydda Death March, right?
Okay.
They then renamed the towns with Hebrew names because they're permanently Jewish now. So anyways, so the Lydda Death March basically leads to even more people fleeing because they just know they're not fighting like Europeans anymore. They're not fighting fellow Arabs. They're fighting some creatures from the underverse. who just slaughter them. Do the things. These people do the things that they claim that the Germans did during World War II.
Right.
There's no evidence for. You found the people, the villains. You found them. They're doing the things right now. And people are massively flamed. Anyways, so now these Arabs are invading them, right? And I'm going to go through this part a little bit fast because we don't need to just go into the battle by battle detail. But basically what happens is the Arabs are winning and it's going great because they're just getting them from all sides. And Israel just needs some time. They just need some equipment and they can pull this off, right? So the UN declares a truce on May 29, 1948, right? Declare a truce. The Arabs are winning. Everybody says, okay, we'll do a 4-week truce. There's an arms embargo during the truce. Both sides violate the arms embargo. It doesn't matter that both sides. Israel needed weapons and they needed to solidify their positions, and now they got it for 4 weeks, right? Okay, so basically Israel fared better during that, but I'm also gonna talk bad about the Arabs here in this exact situation. They were quibbling and fighting, and it's disgusting to watch the history of. You're at a moment where the world's going to change and you're doing the thing. But wait a second. Who's going to get more land, the king of Transjordan or the king of Egypt after this is over? Because look, if we were to pull back on the Jordan's offensive over there and we were just to solidify our forces here, maybe after the war. No, don't do that.
That's
go
after.
all in.
Right.
Yeah, go to war with each other after. I don't care. If you're going to do it. If you're not going to do it, then don't do it. I'm not saying you should do it or not do it. I'm saying if you do it, do the thing. And they're just sitting here quibbling, and you're watching the history of it, and you're like, it's going to go great for you in 67. Don't worry. Right. 73, it'll work out. 2024, it'll be great. You know, how things are going. Anyways, so they seem to be more concerned about their own power positions and their own control of areas near the fighting than the Palestinian Arabs. After the truce was over, Israel just won. Just won. Armistices were brokered between the UN and all countries involved between February 1949 and July 1949. So they're just gradually making truces with the different countries who had attacked them because they were fighting together, but they were individual countries doing the thing, so they had to do a different thing. And armistices were brokered between Israel and the countries involved. Nope, the UN and countries involved.
Oh, okay.
So when you see UN, think Israel here.
Right.
Okay. So now we're just going to talk about the aftermath, right? And so this entire thing is called Nakba, which is the catastrophe in Arabic for the Palestinians, right? And according to Jewish website below, this is coming, that those graphs I'm giving you of the numbers, like from the intro, those are Jewish website, and the link is below. The number of non-Jews in the region went from 1,324,000 to 156,000, or an 88% decrease. Death, fleeing, now living in areas by basically 750,000 were expelled.
Wow.
Right? And so I'm going to put up another slide here. And it's just going to show basically the Palestinians being expelled. It's not that interesting. But there's this thing they do nowadays. Well, I'll get into that in a little bit. I want to show you a clip right now. I'm going to clip this in, but it's basically a bunch of Jews who are protesting and they're yelling for a Nakba nowadays. Okay. They want another catastrophe. I'm just going to play that for you real quick.
Okay.
Nakba, Nakba, no. We want Nakba, Nakba, no.
Okay, so basically after the war was over, the land was 78% owned by Israel, with the Gaza Strip taken over by Egypt, and then the West Bank annexed by Jordan. Okay? So they were given 55%. They were 32% of the population, 33. They got 55. They took 78. And now they're 80-something% of the population. So basically they're 80-something% of the population because the Arabs who now live in Palestine and the West Bank aren't counted in the population anymore either.
Oh.
Because now, like I said, Jordan annexed the West Bank. So that's not even in their zone anymore, so you can lower the number by that.
Okay.
But basically, when you've seen before, remember the little tiny blue things, and that was where the Jews were at, and the Arabs were all over. The Arabs were kicked out of all those regions. So then they were pushed into the West Bank. They were also pushed into adjacent countries. Okay, so this is interesting. I didn't know this before I was researching the video. December 11th, 1948, before the war ends, UN Resolution 194 was passed, which allows all Palestinian refugees to be allowed to return home.
Okay.
They still have no right of return to today.
Really?
That was 1948. The reason why you cannot leave right now, you do what you want, but you can't leave if you're in the Gaza Strip. You can't get back in. You can't get back in. So after the war's over and you're gone, you're just gone. They want to eliminate the population, whether they kill them with bombs or move them, they don't care.
Yeah.
I would stay. I'm sorry, it's terrible. I would stay. You'll probably end up blowing me up and getting rid of me that way, but you'll have to do that to get me to leave. Anyways, so basically, if we just go fast forward into the future, after the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel's now going to occupy those two areas, which is the West Bank and the Gaza Strip that we're always talking about. And basically, like what happens nowadays is they occupy those, but they haven't annexed them. So they don't count their populations as part of the state of Israel.
Okay.
So there's 2.2 million Arabs in Gaza Strip, but they don't count them towards the total population of Israel, even though they occupy the land. So what they say right now is they say, well, Jews are the majority because there's 7.2 million Jews Jews in Israel, and then there's 2.6 million Arabs, so that Jews are this 70% of the population. That's what they say, but there's not. In the land of Gaza Strip, West Bank, and Israel, there's 7.1 and 7.1 million.
Oh,
there's even numbers. They just don't count those ones who are in those regions. They only count the Arabs who are in the main section that they control. So I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
Basically, what do you think? That's my presentation. Like, how did the state of Israel come to be? Here it is.
It's I don't know why I'm surprised that they're so brutal to the Palestinians. I do the whole thing. I'm putting myself sitting in my house, and someone from another country comes in and tells me that these other people that are, South Americans or whatever, they now own your property. F you, man. It's how do you not feel bad for the Palestinians?
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Because see, before it's terrible because it's like, I think about it like, okay, look, I'm going to get two of them. I'm going to have my family flee, the kids and the wife. I'm going to go out there with a rifle and I'm going to get two of them.
Oh, okay.
2-1. That's all I'm going to get. And I'm not going to get them when they get to my town. I'm going to get them on the road where they don't suspect it because they're going to suspect it at the town. That's it.
Right.
They're going to kill me. It's fine. I'm fine with that. But if you look in the story, 1936, they did their strike. Among the execution and torturings and exiling, they confiscated the weapons.
Right.
So I can't take two. I can't take one. You know what I mean? I could try to take one, but my chances are low, and that's a terrible loss. You might as well leave.
Right.
And so having your weapons stripped from you right before, terrible.
It's the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
I also feel like I heard a story. I feel like it was the first Gulf War, but I'm not sure. Of someone saying the only way to beat Saddam Hussein and Iraq and all that is to bulldoze their cities. And that you mentioned the bulldozing of the towns. I'm like, I wonder if that was a Jewish person saying that. Like, we know we've done this. This is how you do it.
Yeah, they have a policy in Israel nowadays, and it's called mowing the grass. Okay. And basically, it's like if anybody, how I understand it, is if anybody in your family does anything that they consider terrorism, they bulldoze your property.
Oh.
So it could be like your cousin is accused of this, and now they're here bulldozing your home. Just leave the homes next to them, fine. Bulldozing the home with guns, like, don't try to stop us.
Those are the good guys, though.
Yeah, because I believe that the other guys are really terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an impossible situation over there to try to figure it out because they're freedom fighters for themselves, they're terrorists to the occupying force, whatever.
Right.
I think this is interesting what happened.
Very.
Yeah.
And none of it's ever been taught. Like, you don't learn this in school.
Yeah, and I just want to keep going. Like now we did Al-Nakba, now I want to do the intifadas or whatever they're called. I want to just go on and just keep going because I think it's fascinating, and I think we're just going to put together some stuff and hopefully people understand. And if we miss something, hit us up.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm not an expert on this. I'm just trying to watch documentaries and read articles and try to figure this whole thing out.
Sure. Yeah, it's tough when you don't. It's not in your culture and all that.
Right.
So yeah, definitely help us out if you have any other insights, stuff we missed, stuff that like he mentioned other events and whatnot. If you got something, let us know so we can put it in future episodes. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.